guest, and we're really happy to have Richard with us. So thank you, Richard, for being here. It's great.
Thank you very much.
We are going to be recording our session this evening, and so just so everybody knows, we are going to be recording, and if you would rather not have your voice on or whatever, you can always type questions in the chat, or if you're on a phone call, you can always email to santamonica.ktc.com and we'll get your question to Richard. We can email him as well. We are, let's see, so this will be the last virtual Sangha that we'll have until December. Next week is, first of all, we'll be off for a little bit. So keep a lookout in your emails for our newsletter for December. Anybody who would like to make a donation this evening can do so at on our website, santamonica.ktc.com. All of your donations are appreciated, and they go to our efforts and our teachers and our Sangha. And then I think that's about it. We're going to start with the Mahamudra lineage prayer. We'll read it once in Tibetan and I'll read it once in English. Once we start, if everyone will please mute your microphones, we would appreciate it so we don't have to hear anybody's background noise. And then once we begin, you can still keep your microphones muted, and then I'm sure there'll be some questions and answers, but we'll leave that all up to Richard, how he's going to do that. And so I think that's about it. So thanks everybody, and we'll begin.
Doje chan chen te lo na ro dan ma pa mi la che je gan po pa de sun she ja kun chen kra ma pa che shi chen ye yu pa jin nan nan Rita Zhao Zi Pao Den Du Fa Shu Jia Lam Jia Ya Che Lang Ya Nye Te Nyam Le Dro Gen Da Po Ka Ju La So La De So Ka Ju La Ma Nam Yu Pa Jin No Nam Tra Jin Ji Lo Shen Lo Gom Yi Kam Pra Shen Pa Jin Shen Ro Gen La Cha Shen Le Pa Dam Se Di Du Ta Ju Pe Gom Chen La Nye Kru Shen Pa Me Pra Jin Ji Lo Mu Gu Gom Yi Go Ro Shen Pa Shin Neng La Tre Go Je Pe La Ma La Nyen Du So Ma De Pe Gom Chen La Je Min Mu Je War Jin Ji Lo Yen Le Gom Yi Lo Shi Sun Pa Shin Kan Shira To Pe Go Sho Ma De Ma Chu De Kra Yo Pe Gom Chen La Gom Cha Lo Dan Dan War Jin Ji Lo Nam Tong Wo Ju Gru Sun Pa Shin Chi Yam Ma Yin Chi Yam Tra Wa La Ma Ga Ro Pra Tra Me Gom Chen La Kuro De Yere Me To Pra Jin Ji Lo Je Wa Kun Tu Yan me chu ki pa la long chu tin sa da lam yi en te rab do ne no je chan yi go pa yu top show no je chan yi go pa yu top show.
Great Vajradhara, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Lord of Dharma, Gampopa, knower of the three times, omniscient Karmapa, holder of the 4 great and 8 lesser lineages, Drikun, Talkun, Tsalpa, these 3 glorious Drukpa, and so on, masters of the profound path of Mahamudra, unequaled protectors of the beings, the Dakbukaju. I supplicate you, Kaju Lamas, grant your blessings that following your example, I hold your lineage. Detachment is the foot of meditation, as is taught. To this meditator who is not attached to food and wealth, who cuts the ties to this life, grant your blessings that I have no attachment to honor or gain. Devotion is the head of meditation, as is taught. The guru opens the gate to the treasury of oral instructions. To this meditator who continually supplicates you, grant your blessings that uncontrived devotion is born within. Non-distraction is the body of meditation, as is taught. Whatever arises is fresh, the nature of thought. To the meditator who rests simply without altering it, grant your blessing that meditation is free from conception. The nature of thought is Dharmakaya, as is taught. Nothing whatsoever, it arises as everything. To this meditator, for whom all arises as unceasing play, grant your blessings that I realize samsara and nirvana inseparable. Through all my births, may I not be separated from the perfect guru, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma, perfecting the qualities of the paths and stages. May I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara.
Before we start, I just want to mention that when Assad and I started the study group in 2002, somehow Richard found us. I don't remember how, but he was one of our first regular attendees, and him and Assad led our discussions for a while as we were just getting going. So Richard, without further ado, come on in.
You're still muted, Richard. You're still on mute.
Okay, I just said that it's a pleasure to be here. I didn't realize it's been 18 years. I thought it was 20, so I'm not as long as I thought. I'm going to talk a little bit about meeting the 2 Karmapas that I have met, because I've met the 17th Karmapa several times. And the meetings are kind of connected with meeting the first Karmapa. So I want to tell you about both those meetings. I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to talk about basic principles of practice, and then a Q&A. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. So meeting the 16th Karmapa was unbelievable. Was one of the most amazing events in my life, and you'll see why, as far as extraordinary things happening. I was in the city of 10,000 Buddhas, where I am now. I was a bhikshu, fully ordained for 10 years, and in a very strict situation. We all ate once a day, we slept sitting up, never lied down to sleep. Day began at 4 and ended at 11. Non-stop ceremonies and meditation. And after about 4 years into my bhikshu life, we heard that Karmapu was coming to our monastery, it was arranged by a fellow monk of mine. And we sent an old junker car to pick up the Karmapa because typical of Chan, Chan is very austere and minimalist. So my teacher, who is the leading, was until he passed away in the 1990s, 95, I believe. He was the head of the Chan lineage. He inherited the lineage from Shu Yun. And of course, it came down from Bodhidharma to the sixth patriarch and so forth. So he was the head of the Chan lineage, just as the Karmapa is head of the Kagyu lineage. And so I had the opportunity at that time to be my teacher's attendant. So when we sent the old junker, I wasn't connected with that. To pick up Karmapa, they turned it down and they got another car and they came in that. But my teacher was eating lunch when Karmapa arrived, and we had no idea what time or when he was going to arrive in the day. And I was serving my teacher lunch, and all of a sudden he said to ring the Arhat bell. So the Arhat bell is like this 8,000-pound bell. It's humongous, and it's never been rung in our monastery. So everybody was wondering what's going on. But, they don't say, well, why did you say that? So the Arhat bell got rung, and then as soon as it got rung, of course, in comes Kuntrul and 16th Karmapa, Rigbe Dorje. And I sat them both down with my teacher there was four at the table. There was Kuntrul, His Holiness the Karmapa, my teacher, and there may have been one other of Karmapa's disciples attending. So I served them food and everything. My first interaction with the 16th Karmapa was amazing. I didn't get it until years later what was happening. The night before he was coming, because I knew who he was, I looked all over for a kata, but it's a Chan monastery, so there wasn't any katas. So I found this piece of rope that was tied in like 18 knots, about this long and an inch wide, And I thought, might as well give that to the Karmapa. Big mistake. So the Karmapa is sitting there, and I'm serving them lunch, and then kind of like in the middle of lunch, I offered the Karmapa this rope, hoping he would think it was a kata. And so what did he do, He's so spontaneous. He grabbed me really forcefully by the arm and just pulled me down into his face. Then he grabbed my bhikshu robe and he stuck it in my face and he said, "What is this?" So, of course, I should have offered him my robe. And so it was a terrible way of getting introduced to him. So anyway, they had a lunch and they talked, I'm just I'm just a servant. But after lunch, it was my duty and my teacher asked me to be the host, show Karmapa around with my teacher. So we went into the Karmapa spent the whole day with us from like about 11 o'clock or 10:30 till 4 or 5. It was a totally amazing day, but I'll just tell you a few glimpses of it that were just outstanding. So we walk into this 10,000 Buddha hall. My teacher made each Buddha at night while everyone slept. He hardly ever slept. And they're little 12-inch gold clay Buddhas. And in that hall, there's a masterpiece statue, 18 feet of Avalokiteshvara, 1,000-armed, 1,000-eyed, 11 heads, just unbelievable. It was carved by the greatest carver in the world. I mean, literally, he's very famous. And it was gilded by him with gold. And only one family in the world knows that process. So it's really slick, literally. It's absolutely beautiful. And I'll send pictures to I'll send it to you, Jody. You can forward it, please. So when we got into that hall, Karmapa was talking to my teacher, and the two were talking, and I was right beside them, and the Karmapa went like this and just tossed the kata towards Avalokiteshvara. But keep in mind, it was on a stage, and it's 18 feet high, and maybe the hands are like, are like this. And the kata, believe it or not, I don't even think Karmapa saw it. It landed right here, draped perfectly in the. Can you see me? Yeah? I don't know, something's happening here. I'm gonna.
No, we can see you perfectly fine. And
Oh,
hear
okay.
you. Yeah.
Okay, something came on my screen. So anyway, so this kata went right in the palm of the hand, believe it or not. And Karmapa wasn't even looking. It was like unbelievable. I don't even know if Karmapa and the master saw it, but that night, it was the most extraordinary thing, except for what followed that I seen. So that kata landed perfectly in the hands. I don't even think anyone could throw it that high, let alone get it draped perfectly in the palm. That night I got a ladder and I snuck into the hall, and I shouldn't have done it, but I stuck a thumbtack in the palm holding the kata there. And then, so after that, the Karmapa offered to give the black crown ceremony. So you all know what that is because you're all Kagyus. So, in Chan, they don't have initiations and stuff like that. They have like these they kind of seem silly sometimes, dialogues, but they can be enlightened if the teacher's enlightened. They can be enlightening. Anyway, so we went to this kind of nondescript hall for the black crown ceremony. My teacher's a perfect host. He set up a whole proper throne for His Holiness the Karmapa, and of course his disciples put all of the brocade and whatnot on it. And there was a bunch of Karmapa's disciples from Boulder, I guess, the Trungpa's disciples, maybe 50 of them. And it was about the same amount of my teacher's disciples. So we're all kind of divided half in this kind of like, imagine it as a big classroom with Karmapa on the throne and Lama Lodro and Kuntrul on one side. So, and there's my teacher on the other side of His Holiness the Karmapa. And so Karmapa begins the black crown ceremony, and he's doing the black crown ceremony. And then all of a sudden, my teacher just gets up in front of the Karmapa and he starts walking back and forth, raising his hand and kicking his feet. And he's saying, I'm the best Buddhist in the world. Every move I make is for Buddhism. And he goes on and on and on through the whole black crown ceremony. And the Karmapa was unmoved. He just kept going. And, but it was just over the top, bizarre. So it was so impolite and terrible that it was actually okay. And what happened was all of Karmapa's disciples just burst out laughing. And that's how it all ended with the black crown. So that was what happened there. And so after that, the students were all kind of like wondering, they'd never seen anything like this, all Karmapa's disciples. And then they said, they paraphrased Bodhidharma's famous question the famous question put to Bodhidharma. Do you all know what it is? The question was, what was the meaning of Bodhidharma coming to the West? Meaning, why did Bodhidharma, who's the beginning of the Chan lineage was Bodhidharma, why did he go to China? So that is the question that was asked of Bodhidharma. So the Kagyu students, they were familiar with that because it's a famous question. So they asked my teacher, meaning, what's the meaning of the great master Hsuan Hua coming to the West? And so my teacher says, well, there's better foods in the garbage cans. That was the answer. It was very, very, very funny, but it's not entirely a joke because we were very poor when we first started. So we did eat out of garbage cans. We used to go dumpster diving to support our monastery and get our foods out of there. So after that, His Holiness the Karmapa, my teacher, went into my teacher's quarters to debate emptiness. The debate went on for about 2 hours. And it's one of the big regrets of my life because all of the students, both masters, went upstairs to watch this debate on emptiness that was, from what I understand, incredible. But I decided to stay downstairs for some odd reason as a Dharma protector. Actually, I wanted to go so bad that I just thought I shouldn't indulge myself. That's what really happened. So I stayed downstairs and I was told afterwards what an incredible debate it was. And the last I saw of Karmapa, I believe it was really a sunny day. So he had an umbrella and there was a group shot taken and I was standing next to His Holiness the Karmapa and my teacher and Kundrul and maybe 15 others in the picture. And I wanted to play big shot with Karmapa and hold his umbrella for him, like a Dharma protector. And so I grabbed his umbrella. I tried to grab it out of his hand, but he is so aware of everything. He first held it really tightly, like playfully, like, you're not taking this from me. And he held it for a second, then he let it go. And I did hold it. But he let me know first that he's giving it to me, not letting me take it. So it's a big difference there. So the follow-up on this story is, there's 2 follow-ups. Do you want to hear them? They on the other side of the planet in Nepal. So I stayed as a monk until, I forget the year, the Karmapa came to our monastery. He passed away about 6 months later, so I don't remember what year that was. But I was a monk until 1982, and then I went to Nepal. And when I was in Nepal, I lived in Sharmapa's monastery on the top of the hill at Swayambhu for a while. And I opened a classroom for monks there on the top of the hill. I rented a small room. And then I became very close friends with the main abbot of the big Kagyu monastery below the Swayambhu hill. So it's the second largest one in Nepal. It's actually larger than Sharmapa's monastery at that time, but it was, at that time, it was much bigger, So I became friends with the abbot. He asked me to teach in his monastery in Pokhara, which is a lakeside resort it's about an 8-hour bus ride out of Kathmandu. So I said, sure, and I taught 6 months there, and we became very close friends, and we are to this day. We talk once a week on Messenger or Viber sometimes. And so his name is Geltsen. And he's the abbot of the Karma Chöling in Kathmandu. And he built many monasteries. He built Dilgo Khenze's monastery, Orgyen Trulku's monastery, and several monasteries. So I asked Geltsen, I said, His Holiness the Karmapa visited my teacher. I said, did he say anything about my teacher or anybody? And when he came to America, and Geltsen said that he asked His Holiness the Karmapa, well, did you meet any masters that were as on the level of our Tibetan teachers when you were in America. And the only one he named was the outrageous teacher that I have, the bizarre one. So that was just an incredible time. The two of them I could see why my teacher was acting so like he was the happiest I ever saw him in my life when he was with the Karmapa. And I was with my teacher 10 years. He only met like 3 people that were on his level, on my teacher's level. And it was Kala Rinpoche, and His Holiness the Karmapa. And right now, I'm not sure who the other one was, maybe Master Xing Yun, who's a Chinese master in Taiwan. But most of the time, he was just alone by himself, so he never really got to have fun, enlightened fun. With the Kala Rinpoche, they had an amazing time together. My teacher bear hugged him and told him he wouldn't let him leave, wrestled with him. But that's another story. So anyway, so Gyaltsen said that about my teacher. And then many years later, about 8 or so years later, I said to Gyaltsen one day, I said, why don't you go visit, Karmapa in Tibet? So Gyaltsen said, I don't know, it's a long ways. Visas are a problem, money's a problem. So long story short, that time I had some money. I bought everybody tickets, and about 6 or 7 of us went to Tibet, to Serpu, to see the 17th Karmapa. And when we got there to Lhasa, and we were just getting in the bus that was just for us to go to Serpu, this kind of like bus driver tried to get rid of me because he's didn't want the white boy to have a good time, I guess. So he told Gyaltsen that if I went, Karmapa could get in trouble. And it's true, because there was Chinese military all over the monastery, guarding it. And so Gyaltsen told me what he said. He says, why don't you just stay behind? It's not a big deal. You can see him another time. I wouldn't have any of it. I said, no, I bought the tickets. I'm going. And that's not fair. I'll sneak in somehow, I told Gyaltsen. And that's exactly what happened. So what happened was, when we got there to Serpu, luckily it was, dusk or almost dark. And there were Chinese military, but I asked them, we brought big bags of rice as offerings and other foods and stuff. So they put 2 big burlap bags on my shoulders like this. And I just walked in like a coolie. And then Karmapa's attendant came up to me when I got inside the monastery. He says, you're in now and don't go out. Don't let them see you. So we spent a few days there in the monastery. And of course, Gyaltsen talked to, and the other monks I with, at that time, there was controversy, And I was with, like Gyaltsen was really close to the 16th Karmapa. And so I was there was 2 other monks that were very close to the 16th Karmapa in our group. And the others were just kind of like lamas, regular lamas. So they wanted to see the Karmapa too, they believe Situ, but still, seeing is believing. It was pure love. I got lots of photos, hundreds of them, of that whole meeting of us in the room when they first met and everything. And Gyaltsen was so close to the 16th Karmapa. When Gyaltsen was a kid, about 18, he told the 16th Karmapa, he says, he wasn't a monk at the time. He says, I want to go and make money in selling goods in Taiwan and be a layperson. And the 16th Karmapa says, well, you can do that And if you recite mantras all the time and read the text when you're not working, it won't be equal to one day if you were a monk. So Gyaltsen became a monk, obviously. And so from that time on, he was the 16th Karmapa. He built a lot of monasteries and stuff and just did like a slave, but so much devotion. So Gyaltsen and the 17th Karmapa was like, you know, like they really knew each other. So obvious, you know, and you can see it in the pictures. They're actually on my memory section, some of them on my website. So then we all left after a few days. I didn't speak to the Karmapa. I got a few offerings from him. One of the amazing things I got was a sarira from the previous 16th Karmapa, from the 17th Karmapa. He gave Gyaltsen several of them, and I got one of them and one for my kids. So then we returned to Nepal, and then His Holiness the Karmapa made it into Nepal about 6 months after our meeting. So after that, I was living in Dharamsala, and I thought I'd go see the 17th Karmapa. So I called Gyaltsen. I said, I want to see the 17th Karmapa. And of course, Gyaltsen knew all of his attendants. He gave me the phone number of the main one, and I called him. I said I wanted to see him, so he arranged the meeting. And then I met the 17th Karmapa, and I told him the whole story about my teacher's bizarre behavior and the day he spent there in his previous life, and the black crown that he gave and all of that. And the Karmapa's like listening really attentively, you know? And then all of a sudden he says, yeah, I'm going to go there. So the sad part of that whole story is, so, you know, like it's not easy getting the Karmapa. And I didn't even ask. And he hears the story and he's going, I'm going to go there. So I wrote a letter to the monastery and they said no. Can you believe it? Some say I've asked a few of the close people here why they said no, and they said they didn't think they could host such a big stature. But at that time, Karmapa wasn't like world famous Google goer and all of that, and, you know. So it would have been, now it's one of the big regrets I have that they just didn't say yes. I would have. They made too big a deal out of it, I think. I would have shown up and just walked him around. The 17th Karmapa, he doesn't need a lot of fancy stuff. You know, he goes to little kindergartens and stuff and visits. He just walks around. He's just like, it's not like that. His mind's enlightened. He doesn't need a lot of pomp and everything. So those are the 2 times. Oh, and so I just told him about that whole story and everything, and I had a very nice meeting with him. And then I visited him several times after that. And you know, when you visit an enlightened master like the 16th Karmapa or the 17th Karmapa, and I've met several great masters, most important Trulshik Rinpoche, who I met, was the first Lama I ever gave a kata to. And Trulshik was like my great teacher and like my brother and father, and I ate with him and drank tea with him many times, and he always treated me like sometimes like a son, sometimes like a student. But when you meet a great master like His Holiness the Karmapa or Turko Orgyen and so many great teachers, you know, you don't have to ask them much. You know, when I saw the 17th Karmapa, my meetings were only like a few minutes, and they can profoundly change you if you're ripe. You know, they say 1 or 2 words and it makes it's like change your whole life, you know, or gets you over some hump that you haven't gotten over. Before I go on anymore, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, so maybe I'll just ask, is there any question here before we go on?
I had a question. So when you met 17th Karmapa back in when you were in Tibet. I thought that's what you said. How old was he then?
He was pretty young. He had these like toy penguins and stuff on his throne with him, you know. It was the year he escaped. So how old would he have been? 17 or 16 or something?
I guess so. I don't remember the year that he got to India.
He looked to me around 15.
Oh, okay.
15, and he had really incredible bearing, you know, really incredible. I like I say, of course, I met the 16th Karmapa. 16th Karmapa was the like just riveted you. I mean, so unbelievably powerful. You know, I mean, he was really something. And when I met the 17th Karmapa, even though he was only 15, you could really feel the power, you know, like, and very moving. So yeah, he was around 15. Have you watched a really good video of him talking about, I think it was a year or so ago or 2 years ago, about how they used to steal his toys and his money and stuff and control him at the monastery, and his teachers were really not very nice?
No, I never saw that.
It's a great video. He's very honest in it, and very just like an ordinary person. He just talks about I'll try and send you the link, Jody, but he
Okay.
talks about more like it from a purely human level, about his experiences growing up in Serpu. And it's a very interesting hour video. I'll find it, I'll send it.
Thank you.
So any other question?
Yeah, you said that the 16 Karmapa gave you something and you kept some for you and you gave some to your family. What was that he gave you? The 16 Karmapa?
No, it was the 17th.
Oh.
He gave me a sarira of the 16th Karmapa. You
I
know
don't
what a
No,
sarira is?
no.
The sarira are when a saint like the Buddha or a great master passes away and they cremate the body. There's little tiny like pearls that they gather afterwards. Sometimes those pearls, they're indestructible. It's like the essence of the enlightenment. They represent the essence of enlightenment. They're like tiny. They can be tiny and they're round, and sometimes they look like a little world, and sometimes they multiply. You can put them in a little jar, and sometimes they multiply. They just look like pearls, like from an oyster, but they're not. And it's from the remains of a great sage. And sometimes even the sarira of the Buddha goes on tour in Nepal from India. And they have sariras. Almost every great master leaves sarira, and the Karmapa was no exception. And the 17th Karmapa gave my teacher a bunch of tiny sarira, and everybody wanted them, of course, but I got like 4 or so for my family, or 5, and small ones. And I wear one around my neck all the time, except now because I've got this brash rash that's consuming my body. It's a kind of fungus. Hope it goes away soon, but I haven't been wearing, there's a rosary I wear all the time, and I have been wearing from different teachers have given me different things over the years, and I keep them around my neck as protection amulets and stuff. So usually I have that around my neck, but I don't right now. And so the Karmapa, that's what it was, a sarira. If you have a pen, you should write it down. S-A-R-I-A, sarira. S-A-R-R-I-A, I think it is. S-A-R-I-R-A. Yeah. You should know about that because it's a...
Some people just call it relics sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's relics. It's
Okay.
relics. I know it by the Sanskrit name. But so we got one of those, you know, a few of them. I felt really lucky because not everybody wanted them in our group, but Gyaltsen only gave it to a few people. And even some of the monks didn't get it, but I got some. And His Holiness the 17th Karmapa, he gave me some really great prasad. It had I think it had hair and bone relics from, different, several Karmapas from, centuries back. And he was very kind because I went and bowed to him and he gave me some, and he was giving everybody some. And then I bowed again a few days later and he offered it to me, and I said, well, I already got some. You already gave me some, so I don't need it. And he says, take 2. So he gave me another one. And I still have those. They're in Nepal right now. They're in Trulshik Rinpoche's monastery in Nepal, that prasad. It was really powerful prasad. That prasad I also wear around my neck. I gathered different, it was a package with like 7 or 8 different prasads of different great teachers of the Kagyu lineage. So I took a little of the prasad out of each one of the package and I put it in an amulet. And I wore the amulet around my neck. It's on my altar right now. So I don't know how many of you wear amulets, but it's a good idea. When you go to Tibet, everyone wears amulets. My first amulet was a Z stone actually given to me by Trulshik Rinpoche. And I never take that off. It's a Z stone and they're for protection. And it's a cultural thing, but if you look in the history of Buddhism and Hinduism, amulets are a big deal. So, it's pretty easy to make your own. You ask a great teacher for some prasad and you get him to give it to you. And then you just put it in a silver amulet, wear it around your neck. It can be a piece of jewelry. But, it's sort of like astrologers and astrology too. You can wear certain stones and stuff around your neck or on, around your neck is good because you can have it like close to your heart region. So it's kind of a power center. And I'm not really into astrology or anything, but you can see that a lot of great masters and Hindu teachers and Buddhist teachers have told certain students when they're having problems to get an amulet, and they'll usually specify what kind of stone or something like that. In my case, I just use prasad, If a really great teacher gave me some prasad, I would just put it in a silver amulet. So typically I wear around my neck about 8 different amulets all the time. You know who Ayang Rinpoche is? He's a Kagyu. Anybody know who he is? Ayang Rinpoche he teaches the Tumo, the Bardo teachings. And I've taken classes with him, 10-day courses. He teaches 10-day courses in the Bardo, transition. And I had the opportunity to host him when he was in Hawaii and drive him around and take care of him. He's a wonderful, wonderful Lama. But he used to criticize me for the weight I was carrying around my neck, and he teased me about it. But I told him it's for protection, and finally he got it. He figured, okay, I was okay, protected. So I think I chatted enough. We're taking up a lot of time. Oh my gosh. That's why I asked Jody for more time, because once I get going, I'm like the ever-ready battery, it doesn't stop. So let's talk a little bit about, I feel funny saying about cultivation, because you know, Karmapa, he says, you know, there isn't any such thing. And basically it's true. It's, you know, like there's a great Taoist master. You know, Taoism is like a level below Buddhism for sure, way below. But they had great masters. And if it wasn't for Taoism, Buddhism would never gotten any footing in China. So Zhuangzi was the only disciple of Lao Tzu that ever, you know, wrote anything down, because they're all Taoists. They don't do anything. So you all heard of the Dao De Jing, right? Yeah? About the way, the Tao, all of that.
Well, you might want to quickly explain that.
The Dao De Jing, it just means the way of life. The Lao Tzu was a great master, and you know, it was all Wu Wei, you know, leaving things alone. And so his only disciple that ever wrote anything down wrote a very, very good book of short stories. Some of the stories you might have became very famous. Like one of my favorite stories that was one of the really great stories is called Leaving Trunks, you know. You know, we call them suitcases. But Zhuangzi was talking about somebody that was really had a lot of stuff, but he had to go somewhere. So before he leaves his cabin, you know, they're all recluses living in the mountains. Before he leaves his cabin, you know, he decides to get this big trunk. So he puts everything in the trunk, and then he gets all of these chains and locks, and he locks it all up with the chains and locks. And then he leaves his hut, and he thinks, I sure hope those chains and locks are strong enough, you know? And he's obsessing about if they're going to be strong enough if somebody comes into the house and wants to steal something. So what happened was this really strong thief came in, and he put the whole suitcase on his back, and he walked off with it. And he's thinking, I sure hope those chains are strong enough. He didn't want it all to dump out. So it's all perspective. Anyway, Zhuangzi, one of the things he said that's really beautiful is he said, I don't know about doing things. I just know about leaving things alone. And, you know, that's really the essence of practice, you know. It's how to leave yourself alone. And I really love Karmapa. Sometimes he talks about, you know, meditation, you know. And he said, well, there's really no such thing, you know. It's a contrived thing, you know. But, you know, because we're so ignorant, we need it. But really, we don't. So how do you do that? You know, like it's tricky. You know, like one time I still am really greedy for food. You know, that's why I eat once a day again. I ate once a day in the monastery, and then I ate once a day for maybe 10 years after I left it. And then I started eating 3 meals a day, and then about 5 years ago, I started eating once a day again. Because it's a big distraction, I realize it, you know, and so I just got a huge bowl and I just put everything in there and I eat once a day. But when I was a monk, I was famous for really eating a lot. So once I had this like big pot, you know, like this big instead of a bowl, like a 4-liter pot. And I was in the dining hall eating in the line with all of the monks, and my teacher walked by and he looked at my big pot. And then I said apologetically, I said, my father always said I had a stomach without a memory. And then my teacher walked off and he got about 3 paces and then he turned around. His wit was so quick. He says, well, then why do you remember to eat? You know, so he turned it all around. But the thing is that if we want to really practice, you know, it's not about, you know, one of the things I learned from every master that I studied with and my teacher especially in Chan, you know, it's not about like how hard you work, but how, you know, like smart you work. And, you know, like you can't really meditate. What you can do is make yourself available so the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can kind of help you, you know, kind of shine a little light in your mind. So meditation is really about making yourself vulnerable, you know, available, you know, making yourself available for the goddesses and goddesses to feel a little sorry for you and, you know, say, okay. But if you try to meditate and you try and make it happen, it never will. You know, you just gotta, like Zhuangzi says, I don't know about doing things. I know about leaving things alone. So that's really where it is, whether you're Buddhist or not, you know, like learn how to leave yourself alone, you know, sit quietly and invite the blessings of the gods into your mind and heart, you know, openness, like that's the big thing, you know, like being really open and vulnerable, because that then you're available, you know, you have to make yourself available. So why aren't we available? Well, obviously there's so much of the Dharma that connects here. You know, if you want to be available, you have to practice renunciation. And, you know, like if you're busy, you know, Buddha's like a bargainer, you know, he'll just give you whatever you ask for, you know. So like if you're, like when I used to teach in Pokhara, all the little monks, you know, I had this whole group of little monks. They were so cute, like 25 of them. And every weekend they studied in this Kagyu monastery from early morning to late at night. And they would be thrown off this ledge into a neem bush naked. I mean, into what's the food that Milarepa ate? The green nettle. They would throw the kids naked in the nettle bush if they didn't behave. And not behaving meant didn't do their recitations. So every time I negotiated with the abbot to take all the kids on the bus ride and get out of the monastery once a week. And I succeeded in doing that. So what they would do is, as soon as we'd get to, I'd take them to a lakeside and then I'd take them into town. First we'd go swimming and then I'd take them into town to just window shop. And they all were looking at watches mostly. Tibetan monks love watches. And so you see, what they were thinking about while they're reading all those sacred texts is one of their hankerings, you know, what they were hankering after. In this case, it's watches, you know. So when we meditate, you know, there's a subtext that goes on in our mind. That subtext kind of determines where your meditation, how available you are. So the less subtext there is, of course, the better. And so that subtext, you know, how you live your life is going to determine how you meditate. You know, you can meditate 10 hours a day, you know, and I did for years. And you will not attract any blessings into your mind stream if you're hankering after stuff and you follow those hankerings. So one of the keys to really is to recognize that a few things about practice. First of all, practice should be, you know, it's an offering of your body, speech, and mind. It should be done in a formal way. Like all of you practice, I practice, and if you practice, it should be formal. It should be like, and by formal, I mean, I noticed Jody has the Buddha statue there. She's probably offering bowls and stuff like that. And most of you do, but a lot of people I know don't. So like I talk to people all the time. I say, Well, do you meditate? Yeah, sometimes. Or well, do you meditate every day? No. Uh, and I say, well, do you meditate regularly? And they say, okay, yeah, I do. But if you ask and you talk to people that aren't practitioners, typically they are sporadic. So that doesn't work. You know, sporadic doesn't work, just like it wouldn't for diet. People make a mistake because they do not have consistency. So meditation should be, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it should be at a certain time every day for a certain amount of time every day, because that gives you a benchmark. And you know, a certain practice, you develop a practice, and never blame the practice for not working. You know, almost any practice will work if you are sincere. But in addition to meditation, the meditation should be 100% consistent. When we wake up in the morning, we don't just get up in bed and start meditating. That's a terrible, terrible habit, and I know monks that do that. You don't just rise and start meditating in bed or something like that. I lived in Dharamsala. My room was in the 20s because I didn't have heat. And I got up and out of bed, washed my face, brushed my teeth, and then sat down and did prostrations, put out offering bowls, lit candles, and all of that stuff. You want your meditation to be respectful. It's an offering of your body, speech, and mind. So always be clean. If your feet are dirty, wash them and then meditate. Have a clean body. If your body is not clean, it reflects what's going on in your mind. You want to have a clean body, clean clothes, and sit respectfully before the Buddha. It's an offering, body, speech, and mind. It all goes together. And you'd be surprised, you know, sometimes I'm sick or I have not feeling well, and then I meditate in bed. It's terrible. I don't even like it. Even though I know that it's like, you know, I'm not feeling good, I try and get out and, you know, at least get cleaned up. So you wouldn't go before the Karmapa, you know, think about, yeah, the Karmapa is in the room with me, or whoever your teacher is, and they are. And you attract them if you're really serious and respectful. So little things like that take 10 minutes make a big, big difference, because it's attitude. Mahamudra, great seal, great attitude. Great view. So we want to honor ourselves and honor our teachers by being respectful and proper and formal. And time is a big, big deal. Meditation should be on time. And if you have something going on and you can't do it at that time, mark it and do it the next day, and make sure you do, or later that day. But don't ever let any single one, even one meditation session, don't let it slide, because if you let one slide, you'll let 2 and 3. And that's why people that are lay people that I know, they say they meditate sporadically sometimes. It starts they're meditating every day, but then they miss a day because they got a dental and they don't make it up. Then the next time they have another excuse, and pretty soon they're meditating once or twice a week. Don't let it happen. And you cannot let it happen by being consistent, you know, making up your sessions. So, and it creates a benchmark. Find out, you know, everybody should have an amount of time that they meditate too, and develop a personal practice. So it doesn't have to be a lot of time. I started with only 5 minutes a day, but I always did it, that 5 minutes, you know. And this was when I was 16 or so. And it was like I felt so stupid during that 5 minutes, but I kept doing it every day. Then I started liking it, and pretty soon I couldn't keep away from it. So the time of meditation is whatever you make it, whatever's comfortable for you. But more important than the meditation, or as important, is lifestyle and what you do with your life, supporting practices, like how you conduct yourself in your daily life. And renunciation, is a big, big thing. Like you don't have to be, you could not be, even if you wanted to be, like Milarepa or Ramana Maharshi or some of the great, Dilgo Khyentse, he lived in a cave 18 years, and, we can't match that, but, we can at least do within our own, capabilities. A lot of times, we don't work within our own capabilities, where are the outflows? Ask yourself, everybody's different, like I know people that can have, a great car and a nice house and they're not attached. I know a billionaire very well, multi-billionaire. He has all of his stuff. He doesn't pay any attention to it. He's a Hindu, he's a great practitioner. But other people, if you got to look at your own mind, where your outflows are. Naturally, if you like ice cream, you don't eat much of it. You have it like when you're serving other people or something like that. You avoid hankerings and it's pretty easy to do if you try. Like when you meditate, a lot of times you'll notice the subtext. Like when I first came back from India, before I met my teacher and went on my spiritual journey, I stayed at the San Francisco Zen Center. And I'd been in India and Nepal 2 years at the time. Came back to America looking for a teacher. And I somehow stumbled into the San Francisco Zen Center. Well, when I stumbled in there, I was already meditating over 10 hours a day in the Himalayas of Nepal, and in 6 months, and I just got out of 6 months of a cave in South India. And so I went into the San Francisco Zen Center and I meditated with them, and they meditated 2 hours in the morning, a couple of hours in the afternoon. But then after the 2-hour session, they'd go across the street and they'd smoke pot and they'd, have peanut butter sandwiches, and guys and girls would talk and have a good time. So I went into the front office and I said, I meditate with all your people, but I'm used to really serious practice. They go across the street and they chit chat and they had a party for right after the meditation. So she sent me to my teacher. She says, well, there's this Manchurian Chan master that no one can stay with because he's so bitter. His practice is so bitter. You could go try there, but no one can stay there. So I was there an hour later. But the point is that the San Francisco Zen Center, that kind of practice is all too common. Like you have to look where your outflows are, and everybody is different. Like if you have a common rule is to avoid hankerings. Hankerings are things that are in the back of your mind that you want, you just cannot do without, and blah, 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 blah. And try not and get it, whatever it is. One of the rules of thumb that our teacher here always said was, you don't need the best, just get something that works, You don't have, if you want a fancy leather jacket, get one of those leatherette ones or something, like Yogananda's teacher, Sri Yukteswar. When Yogananda was in training, he had a disciple that wanted to fast. And Yukteswar said, well, why not throw the dog a bone? In other words, hankerings can be all sorts of things. It could be even wanting to fast, but that's also a kind of craving. You want to fast, maybe it makes you feel like a big shot or something. So you have to look at your own mind and think, well, is this really something that's an outflow? Avoid the outflows. You have to look, part of meditation is looking at your subtext. What's going on in the back of your head? if you follow those in real life, you know, when you're off the meditation cushion, then you never get anywhere when you're meditating. So part of meditation is like, you know, kind of pointing you in the direction of, you know, how to renounce, you know, be a renunciate. You can be a renunciate without being in a cave or anything. And believe me, I know how to do that. And then meditation is really easy. You know, always say to yourself, not to, non-duality, you know, that's what's happening, non-duality, not to. You're meditating, body, speech, and mind, not to. You don't want to just go following. On the one hand, you're not your body, you're not your mind, you're this clear, bright crystal, you know, and so forth, and then follow any kind of desire that you have. It's just terrible. You're going in two directions. It's duality. So when His Holiness the Karmapa says there's no such thing as meditation, what he's saying is, you know, make yourself vulnerable. Don't go looking for pleasure. You know, if you look for pleasure, you know, then the real pleasure is not going to find you. If you don't look for pleasure, real pleasure will find you. It'll come into your head, illuminate your mind, and make your whole body light like you can fly. And Milarepa did, you know. So if you go out looking for pleasure, then pleasure won't come looking for you. But if you don't look for pleasure, you know, it doesn't mean you have to be an ascetic, but just be smart, you know, find a middle way, you know, halfway there, halfway not, you know, and then it will find you. You don't have to look. And so that's what His Holiness Karmapa talks about. I hear him say that, you know, meditation, you know, like it should, you know, it's natural, you know, like Ken Rinpoche would say, you know, the meditation should be very natural. When you sit down to meditate, it shouldn't be like you're doing something different than you were doing like a few hours ago when you were shopping. You know, it's just kind of natural flow. So how are we doing on time? Okay. Any questions or answers or anything? Hello, are we still around?
Yeah.
Did I lose everybody?
Can you hear me, Richard?
I hear you.
Yeah, I think we should unmute everyone to see if there's any questions.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, I think Max would have to do that.
No,
Max, are you around?
No, it's not. Everybody has to do it themselves. I can't.
Okay.
so
If everybody was unmuted, we'd probably have a lot of background sound. So maybe it's best if only those speaking would unmute themselves.
Anyone have any questions for Richard?
I do.
Go for it.
I have a question. My usual morning starts with several short prayers. The Tashi prayer, the prayer we were given for COVID, Yidam prayers that I was given as part of the empowerments and things like that. Do you have any suggestions for trying to, I don't want to say mindfulness, but a lot of times, particularly later in the week when I'm sort of tired when I get up, I'm sort of on autopilot. And so, you know, on the one hand, I'm very good about saying them. On the other hand, I want to always say them and mean them.
Stand up. That's what I do. I stand up. I also feel tired and sometimes cold in the morning. And a lot of times my morning, very first thing in the morning I do is Guru Yoga and some mantras. It takes an hour and 15 minutes, that particular section. And often if I find I'm waking up and I'm kind of like you say, autopilot, I do my practice standing, the hour and 15 minutes standing before the altar. And it works perfectly. And it's good for you too. And it's a very nice way to offer your body, speech, and mind. When I was a young novice monk, my teacher would often come into my room and he'd find me standing there instead of sitting in full lotus. And he always would look at me really approvingly. So I still stand, and often in my meditation, a lot of times I will stand 1, 2 hours, 3 hours. And I stand often. If I feel at all not awake and not together, or if I'm reciting a long mantra and I miss some syllables here and there, and I notice it happening a couple of times, then I'll stand up. And my advice to you is if standing doesn't work, do something else. That's what I do. If almost every time standing works, 90%. But if I'm really unmindful and my mind is scattered for some reason, won't settle, then I go out and I rake the yard or mow the lawn or, clean up the room or something different. Because a lot of times the interference is there for a reason. You might, it just shouldn't be meditating. Never ever force yourself to meditate. Create a good habit. But when you meditate, if it's not going naturally, stand up. And then if it's still not going naturally, stop. And don't go doing other practice at all. Don't read a book or Dharma book. Just get away from the whole Dharma thing and do something totally unrelated, completely unrelated. Take a walk in the park or just, don't try. You don't ever never force meditation. Never ever force it.
Okay. I'll try that.
Okay, good. Yeah. It'll make you strong. Any other question? Answers? Anything I did wrong? Want to complain about?
Richard, I was wondering when you spoke earlier about visiting Dharmasala, and you said you stayed at Dharmasala, and I may be confused about what Dharmasala is, but I think of it as a compound where the place where Karmapa stays is, and the place where Dalai Lama stays is, or maybe Dharmasala is a town, but I'm just wondering, can a person just go there and stay in Dharmasala, or do you need a special invitation?
I don't know about now with the COVID, but it's like there's Upper Dharamsala and Lower Dharamsala. Upper Dharamsala is up on the mountain, or very near the big mountains, and it's a few thousand feet above Lower Dharamsala. His Holiness Karmapa's place is below the Dalai Lama's in Lower Dharamsala. It's about an hour drive. And Upper Dharamsala is a little town with His Holiness the Dalai Lama's temple. And there's a few thousand foreigners there all the time. Probably not now, but before, when I was there, and for decades now, there's a whole community of Dharma practitioners and many lamas also there. So it's a really cool place to stay. And there's teachings going on every single day. And you see the Dalai Lama teaching, once or twice a week. And I meditated in his temple for the couple of years I was there, like 6 hours a day, every day. I was pretty well known by all the guards. They would just let me through the security and stuff. But it's people doing prostrations there every morning, and it's really fun. I got into it too. People go in there and they're prostrating. They have prostration boards, and anybody can join. And I joined them and did a whole bunch of prostrations for a few months. And it's just a great community and a place to meditate. There's many teachers there, not just His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but there's many teachers. It's mostly Gelugpa orientated, but there's others there also. And then it's an hour drive to His Holiness the Karmapa's place, and there's a very famous Naropa cave right near Karmapa's monastery. So the whole Dharamsala area is like a rich place. I mean, in the world now, that and Kathmandu are the two places where you can really meet a lot of great teachers and get a lot of good teachings and good place to practice. But, you know, it's, if you want to go there, that's great. You know, heaven's in your mind though, so.
But where did you stay? Where did you sleep? How did you find a place?
There's tons and tons of little guest houses and places where you can stay. And like I had a place for 150 a month, and it was right above the Dalai Lama's temple. Literally, for me, about a 10-minute walk or 5-minute walk down to the temple. I could hear them doing their prayers every day. And I could see them. So for a couple of $100 a month, you can get a place there. That's it. And then food's cheap, so you can still live in India very inexpensively if you know how, and you're not particular.
Thank you.
My first trip to India, I took $2,000. I loaned an Indian 600 or something almost immediately upon getting there. I was so stupid. I just met him and he asked to borrow some money. Like a fool, I gave it to him and never got it back. I met his family and everything, but so I stayed there 2 years on like $1,500. Now it's changed a lot, but not you couldn't stay for 2 years for $1,500, but you could stay for 5 or 6 months on that.
Thank you. A little tip I wanted to give you for your fungus, try tea tree oil. It will kill skin fungus, but try it in a small spot because it might sting.
What is it?
Tea tree oil.
I did that. I've done everything 6 weeks. It's the worst, most tenacious things. And I've had psoriasis and everything. It's a brand of ringworm, and it started on my waist, a big spot the size of a donut, and it spread to my arms and my chest. And like, you know what I'm doing now? I've got something that's finally starting to work. First, I tried all the over-the-counter medicines, but I smashed up, I got a bunch of garlic, dried garlic, and I mixed it with I heated a bunch of coconut oil and made a paste, and I put it all over my body, and it's working.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's
garlic also would kill it. Yeah.
Garlic is antifungal and
and oregano oil is really powerful.
Yeah,
I use it
oregano oil. I've
kids.
been on the internet for like 6 weeks. I know everything about ringworm now. I mean, all the ins and outs, and still I haven't cured myself. I think it's because I've got some Mahakala angry at me about something. I don't know exactly what, but you know, I prayed tonight to tell him to let me go. You know, like I kind of do self-inquiry sometime, analytical meditation, and usually I say, I'm not my body. Now I say, my body belongs to my brash rash. And that's the truth. It took over, so I don't have to say I'm not my body anymore. It belongs to this rash.
So I think we should wrap it up, and I think it was great to hear your stories, Richard, and your insight really, really awesome.
Well, it's so much fun talking to you all.
Yeah, well, we definitely would love to have you back again.
I'd love to come back again.
Yeah.
I'll probably be talking to myself after we hang up for another hour.
Well, you could do that, but you could see I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but you know, I can see like in your whole being kind of that the Dharma and the experiences you had and how you speak. It's really nice to hear. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll
You're
do,
welcome.
we'll end with a dedication prayer.
Okay. Are you going to say it or am I supposed to say it?
Sumo, we didn't hear you do it in Tibetan, so if you want, we could do it one more time. Okay, I'll say it. I'll say it in Tibetan. I'm gonna just turn my volume down because I think it's kind of loud.
I did unmute. Okay, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. Do you want to go
Okay.
ahead?
Okay, yeah, I will again. Sonam di tam che shikani topnenya pedanam pamjene jelana chibala tupai shibe tule droa shu.
By this merit, may we become omniscient. From this attainment, after defeating evil faults, through the endless storm of birth, old age, sickness, and death, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks,
Richard.
Richard.
Stay well.
Happy, healthy, and safe Thanksgiving Day. And everybody see you guys